So this webinar is part of the Our Work Matters campaign. It's a collaborative joint union campaign led by members of trade unions who represent outsourced workers and supported by us here at the TUC. Our aim here today is to give you an introduction to using digital tools and tactics to strengthen your campaigns with outsourced workers. We only have a bit over an hour, as I said, so we're not going to be able to go into the finer details. Instead, we want to give you an idea of what's possible, signpost you to further resources and support, and also hear about the way that you've used digitools in your campaigns and organising. I'm going to stop talking very shortly and hand over to Lois, Matthew and Gareth, who know a lot more about this subject than I do. Lois McCallum and Matthew Topham work in the TUC's excellent digital organising and campaigns team. Gareth Forrest is Equities Campaigns Officer and has done lots of impressive work incorporating digital tools and tactics alongside more traditional campaign work to win for equity members. I'm going to stop there, and I think it's Lois I'm handing over to. Lois, over to you.
Hiya, nice to meet all of you. I hope everyone's doing well. I'm going to start off by showing my screen. Let's see how we're doing. I'm going to apologise in advance because a few of our computers are being extra slow today. So if things take longer, thank you for being patient. And hopefully you can all see this. Can everybody see? I'm not sure that I can see you, so if you do need something from me, just somebody else, Daniel or others, do like chip in. Yes. So like Daniel said, we've got about an hour just over today. We're going to run you through some digital tools and tactics. Lots of these are sort of more generic digital tools and tactics. We'll be talking about examples from unions, like crucially, everything we're talking about will be union examples. Some of these are outsourced workers examples, some of them are insourcing campaigns, and some of these are just other union campaigns, but all of them will be useful and applicable lessons that you can use in your campaigning and organising for outsourced workers. So what I wanted to just start off really quickly is a quick explanation of what we mean by digital campaigning. We're going to say that word a lot, and it's useful to know what we're talking about and crucially why it's relevant. So the first thing to say is that digital campaigning or digital organising, it is just campaigning and organising. It's just how are we using things like email and texting and petitions and right to MP actions and any sort of digital means to communicate with our members, our potential members, or with our supporters. And the intention at all is not to replace traditional organising. We know that nothing is more powerful than having in-person conversations with our colleagues and with workers. So we're not looking to replace it at all. But we also have to recognise that good organisers meet workers where they are. And right now, workers are online, whether it's because they're working remotely or because they're just spending a lot of their time online. And so we would be remiss to not try and organise them in this way and to engage them online. So what we're going to cover today, we're going to talk a little bit about Megaphone. It will be interesting to know how many of you have either used Megaphone before. I reckon there might be a few of you on the call who have started petitions on Megaphone before, or are on our mailing lists. So we'll talk a little bit about Megaphone, which is our petition platform that the TUC runs. We'll give some examples of how unions are using petitions. We're hopefully going to do a bit of a deep dive into what makes a good petition. A petition in itself is not the goal. It's using a petition in a strategic way that makes the most sense. And then depending on how we're doing on time, we might cover a bit about WhatsApp, how unions are using that in their campaigning. And then we really want to hear from you guys if there's any other digital tools that you're using in your campaigning. So I'm going to hand over to my colleague, Matthew, who's going to run through a couple of examples of megaphones. So over to you, Matthew.
Thanks, Lois, and thanks everyone for coming today. Great to see you all and meet you. I'll start off just with a quick overview of Megaphone, for those of you who haven't used it or come across it already. So Megaphone is run by the TUC and it's for all our affiliates to use. the aim is to make it easy for reps and organisers like yourselves to quickly and easily set up petitions in support of your campaigning and your organising. Versus other platforms that you might be familiar with, the benefit of this is it's built by and for unions. It keeps the data of people who are signing up to support our campaigns in our movement, rather than doing the job of other platforms and having them sign up and take all the data and use it for their campaigning or whatever. It keeps it within the movement. And so that means we've built up a list of union supporters who want to hear about union campaigns. So they want to take action on workplace issues, and we can email them and ask them to support actions that you set up on the site. So if you set a petition up or some other form of action, we can email those supporters who've already taken action in the past and get them to support your campaigns. And we're also on hand to offer campaigning and advice. And all that campaigning and advice is based on what we've seen work well from colleagues and comrades across the movement. So where unions have done great tactics in the past, we try and learn from that, and then we can support you when and where you want it with that experience from elsewhere. And as you can see, there's some figures there on the number of petitions and the number of actions that have been taken across the platform, and we're looking to expand that through working with you where we can. So what can Megaphone do? The really big, obvious, straightforward thing is it can do petitions, online petitions. People can sign up to support your campaigns. But we also support with a number of other things like targeted emails. So we worked on an outsourcing campaign you might see later on in the session for workers, porters, and security staff at a hospital in Yorkshire. And they asked that they could have a direct email to the CEO of the hospital to get them to intervene in the dispute and get the outsourced company to equalize their pay and conditions. And so hundreds of people across the region were able to fill up the inbox of that CEO using this targeted email tool on the website. We can also provide events, so people can sign up to come along to events. I found that really useful in the past. So you can gauge how many people are coming, and you can tell the press, so you get more interest in your dispute or your action. And you can also email people who have signed up to your petition for further updates. There's a list of other things there that we support with. Lois will talk about some of those later. And if there's any of them that we don't touch on today, like peer-to-peer texting, maybe that you are really interested in for your union or your branch or dispute, then you can get in touch with us and hear more about those. Lewis, yeah, if you can pop us on to the next slide. So I'll just quickly show you, if you've not seen it, what Megaphone looks like. This is the homepage, and you can look through the petitions that there are there. But you can see, hopefully in the middle, there's that big red button, Start a Campaign. And so this is where you can go. If you want to get started on a petition, you click that button. And then if we go to the next slide, it immediately is able to talk you through those key things that you'll need to set up your petition. So what's your title? What's your demand? Have you just had something come through from the bosses about cutting weekend rates? Well, you can make that the demand. Who's the target? Who's the person who's got the power to change the issue? Who needs to see that thousands or hundreds of people are supporting your demand? And then it goes through the other steps of information you need to build your petition. So it should hopefully be quite straightforward. I used this before I joined the TUC, and it was a really helpful tool in my campaigning, and hopefully can be in yours as well if you've not used it already. So Lois, if we go on, then please. So just, we don't want to have too much of us talking. We know that there's lots of experience, lots of ideas in the room. Want to gauge what your feelings are about digital tactics. So if anyone wants to pop in the chat or even unmute and briefly say, have you signed a petition recently? Have you used one or started one in any of your campaigning or disputes on Megaphone or elsewhere? And has anyone got any kind of questions, or are they skeptical about petitions and how they can be supporting our campaigning and organising across the movement? Feel free, if you want to raise your hand. I can't necessarily see everyone, and if you just want to unmute, if you've got anything you want to share, feel free to come in. One of the things we often hear is that it can feel a little bit like slacktivism. You know, people just sign and then it's kind of thrown into the wind and nothing kind of further happens with it. We're really keen that some of the great tactics and examples we'll talk through in a second are a way to see that petitions are, the point of them is never the petition itself, it's what you can do with it. It's something you can use to unlock other tactics and actions. Unless anyone, thank you to Samantha in the chat. I've signed, you saying you signed a few over the years, and helpful for awareness raising. That's exactly one of the examples we'll talk about. And actually, Gareth's done some great campaigning using petitions to get people interested and aware of disputes and issues for equity. We'll maybe move on to our examples, Lois, then, if that's okay with you. So petitions, sometimes, yeah, people think they're a fad, but we'll talk about the examples. So in this first example, as I was saying, we're working with these workers up in Airedale Hospital at the moment in Yorkshire, and one of the things we're hearing constantly from them is we're outsourced and we're treated like second-class citizens. And that might be something that you hear from members, that you feel yourselves in your work. We know across outsourced jobs and roles that it's really easy to feel undervalued, underappreciated, and definitely underpaid. And lots of your members probably feel that way. And it also leads to being kind of cut off. You can be cut off from your colleagues in the same workplace who are employed on different terms and conditions, cut off from people who aren't outsourced doing the same role or doing other roles. And all of that gives power to the employer and can feel like it's taken power away from our movement and from workers in outsourced roles. This example of how we can use a petition is building the public support and building confidence of workers to try and combat that power that that managers and employers can have through outsourcing. And so in this example, there were just 15 workers, so that's where the kind of lack of power comes in at Denso Marston, who had been working through the pandemic, entering the cost of living crisis, and were being offered a pittance in a pay rise. And so they went on strike. It was the first time they'd ever gone on strike, quite a big step they were taking, just 15 of them, so it can feel quite vulnerable. What they did was they started a petition on Megaphone, got 4,000 signatures, but they didn't just leave it sitting there on the website as a way of putting pressure on managers kind of online. What they did was they printed out, as you can see there, all of those names, all 4,000 names of people who signed in support of them, and they had that as a huge A1 prop that they could have on the picket line or carry with them as they were going towards negotiations, as a way of showing this isn't just about us 15, we've got support from the community, got support from other workers. And one of the great ways you might be able to use this in your workplaces, Lois has sometimes talked about this, is it's a way to bring maybe people together who are outsourced and aren't outsourced. If you can get everyone signing a petition, all their names on a big prop, it's a way to build that confidence, build that connection, so that we're not so isolated and so easy to divide by the employer. So Lois, we might move to the next example then. Oh, Lois promised that there would only be workplace examples. I wanted to show that Gareth and I, on a previous in a previous life, we worked in Yorkshire to campaign through the regional TUC for buses to come into public control, and we got 12,000 signatures on that petition, and we printed them out on a big banner, all of the names to spell out 12,000. And that not only showed and gave confidence to the campaign, it was a way, as you can see there, to get the news and the press to be interested in a trade union campaign, because you've got this big prop based on the petitions you've taken. So that's just another way you can use all those signatures with a prop. So Lois, if we go on to next slide. It's also a fantastic way to identify workers, workplaces where there are issues that you can be getting involved in, and potentially identify workplace leaders. And so it's a bit small here, but this was a normal petition setup, but we added a button circled in red there, I work for Pizza Express, because this was a dispute where Pizza Express had cut across all of its sites access to lunchtime hours, which was going to cost a whole load of work and a whole load of money for workers up and down the country. There wasn't necessarily huge density across all of the employment sites, but this was an issue we knew was affecting everyone. And so Unite Hospitality was able to set up this petition as a way, basically, of opening the door. Is this an issue that's affecting you in your workplace? Well, sign this petition, because we know that's something that can be affecting you, and then you can tick to say, I work at Pizza Express, and the organizers then were able to email just those who had said, I'm a worker at Pizza Express, and you can then potentially take those workers on a journey from signing a petition, maybe to joining an event to talk about what can be done to fight plans from an employer, in this case, the taking of the hours, and then down the line, you can contact them and say, do you want to come and join the union and fight this issues and other issues in the workplace? So you can use it to identify workers, potential members, potential workplace leaders in that way. This is an example that some people in the room may know better than me. It's from the region, and it's Our Work Matters relevant campaign. So I'll briefly summarize it, but if anyone in the room wants to unmute and talk about it with more experience and more knowledge, please do come in. But the RMT has been working for a long time on outsourcing in the rail industry. Here in the underground, tube cleaners, 2,000 underground cleaners, worked very hard, obviously, as lots of Our Work Matters campaigns and workers did through the pandemic, having been outsourced to an international company making huge amounts of profits. So here, a US company that was holding down pay, paying no sick pay, and making £14 million of profit throughout the pandemic. The mayor promised to review that contract, and so the RMT were able to set this up as a petition to show that thousands of people across the region care about those workers, want those workers to be insourced, so that this is a great way to be putting pressure on a politician when I'm sure Khan was getting a whole lot of pressure from the industry itself. So that's one of the ways you can use it to put pressure on. I see Lois has asked if anyone from London RMT is in the room. I can't see it. I can't see all of you. If anyone wants to wave and speak to this campaign in any more detail, please do. I'm not seeing anyone, so do just unmute if you want to come in. But we'll move on to this example from PCS up in the Northwest. So DBS checks are obviously a big part of the employment landscape, and that function has been outsourced from the Home Office to, in this case, Hunduja Global Services, HGS. And again, this common theme were key workers during the pandemic having to come in and make sure the DBS checks were going ahead. And then we hit the really escalated cost of living moment, and there was no decent pay offer from that outsourced employer. And they were also keeping terms and conditions beyond pay, just to the legal minimum, despite making a huge amount of profit globally. And so workers there went on strike and were using that industrial power to fight for increased pay and increased pay offer there. But they also used Megaphone to set up a way for the public and other workers to offer their support. And so you can just use a petition in this scenario. That puts pressure on a CEO or a middle manager. They're not used, like politicians, to seeing their name next to thousands of signatures. But here, PCS went a step further and used the function we have on Megaphone, where you can directly email a target. And so the CEO in the UK of HGS was targeted with 1,300 emails from people supporting the fight from HGS workers, PCS members for fair pay. So it's a great way to fill up their inbox and put pressure on them to deliver in a dispute. Those, if we move on, yeah. And this is one of the most fundamental ways I've ever used petitioning campaigning, and Gareth may well feel the same when he comes to talk about his examples, building a base of supporters. So it's not just about getting those names and those numbers up. So you've got 30,000 people on this petition. It's about building a list of people you can use and ask to take action in support of your campaign or your organizing effort. Lots of you may be familiar with this example from last year, when workers at the Amazon site in Coventry were fighting for union recognition, a really historic battle there. to win recognition at an Amazon warehouse in the UK. They came very, very close. And as part of that, they ran this petition on Megaphone to build up a really visible show of support, 30,000 people, but also then use that to mobilize supporters to take further action. So on the next slide, we'll see that we were able to support the members there at Amazon to go to Parliament and talk to MPs, because they needed MPs to act either in the moment or going forward through things like the Employment Rights Bill to tackle the union busting that huge firms like Amazon are able to bring to these moments. But we couldn't just ask members at Amazon in Coventry to come down to Parliament if we weren't sure they were going to be able to meet with lots of MPs. And so that's where, having built that list of supporters online, GMB, the Amazon workers, were able to email them and say, hey, can you ask your MP to meet with us in Parliament? And so they sent them a link. Here's a template email that to your MP, ask them to turn up on this day and meet with the workers from Amazon. And so you can see a picture at the top there. And you can also use it to provide leverage and power in organizing drives in that bottom changing image, where outside Amazon's headquarters, as the ballot was happening in Coventry, GMB and others across the movement organized an action to show 30,000 people want Amazon to stop its union busting and are supporting the workers in their drive for recognition there. So if we just move on to a final example, which will hopefully kick off into the examples Gareth has to talk through, but I just couldn't let this one go by because it's such a great example. Is you can use your petition not just as a way to spark digital actions, not just as a way to put pressure directly on decision makers like politicians or the employer, but it can also, as we were hearing from Samantha earlier, use it for awareness raising about an issue. So equity members were facing a real issue in Bethnal Green, because Bethnal Green Working Men's Club was up for sale, and that meant that the program of shows and events that these members were relying on were going to be closing very rapidly. And so starting a petition, not just a way to build pressure to stop the closure, to maybe build up a campaign more widely, but a way to go out in the community and have a conversation, because it can be very hard. I've done this. I don't know if others have. If you try and stop people in the street and get them interested in an issue, lots of people have places to go. But if you say, "Do you want to sign this petition?" It can be a real conversation starter, and it can draw people in and get them to start thinking about workers in their community and how they're being affected by any number of different changes. So I'll stop there and hand over to Gareth for him to talk through his experience using these tools.
Good morning, everyone. Thanks very much, Matthew, Lois and Daniel, and thanks for the invite to this. So my name's Gareth. I'm Equity's National Campaigns and Education Officer. Many of you will know Equity as the Actors Union, and that is true, we are, but we also represent lots of people in the performing arts much more widely, from drag artists to costume designers, for example. So we describe ourselves as the union for performers and creative practitioners. Most of our members would be described as precarious workers on short-term or freelance contracts. You know, you may imagine our members, as Judy Dench, Maggie Smith, and they are members. That's a very small fraction of our membership. Most of our members earn, 15 grand or less a year from their work, and most of them are working on really short-term precarious contracts. So at all times of year, I'm running lots of campaigns, different campaigns in parallel with our members and our branches and our workplaces across the country. But even though I'm really busy doing all that, I always make time to use petitions on Megaphone. We use Megaphone with basically every industrial campaign we run, and it's become a really important option in our suite of campaign tactics. And I'm going to tell you why. But first, I want to show you what one of our campaigns looks like. So I'm going to show you a video we made about our campaign to save Oldham Coliseum. So if Lois or Matthew could tee that up, that'd be amazing. Thank you.
Nothing's happening.
While we're trying to get that sorted, there's a couple of questions in the chat, Matthew, I wonder if you might be able to respond to. So Thomas asked what email addresses in the megaphone, I guess the targeted emails to CEOs and company bosses, where are these emails sent from? And another question from Dennis related was, presumably employers can block these emails, and what happens to them if they just all go to the spam box?
I can come back on this quickly. Sorry, as promised, my laptop is being incredibly slow, so these videos are going to show up really soon. Just on those quick questions about targeted emails, so they will come from the individual who sent them, or you kind of choose two different options. They either come from the individual who sent them, or you can send all of the emails at one go, kind of in a daily block, in which case it will come from campaigns at Megaphone, and like an email that says, 100 people have written to you today, and then below it will list sort of the content of everyone's emails. And then in terms of blocking, you're right, sorry, my sound has now started to work on this video. In terms of employers blocking the emails, they can, but we can see on the back end whether people open or click the emails, which is really handy. So we can let you know, okay, look, the employer or the person opening this email has seen it and they have clicked on it. So and also, even if they do their worst and they do block the emails, still having that public site where you've got that person's name on a website, that says this person is receiving emails, is still an act of pressure. I hope that helps, and let's try once more on sharing my screen, and hopefully it will work by now.
We're trying to save the Colosseum because it's been here for 135 years, serving its local community, and we believe really strongly that the people of Oldham deserve a theatre on their doorstep, just like the people of Manchester and the people of London. And of course, for us as a union, it's really important that our members can have work locally and do work for that local community.
I've loved being an audience member here. I love all the shows they put on, but also they do lots of really important community outreach work. They really walk the walk in terms of supporting local artists and actually supporting local communities.
It's an important part of this town's heritage, of its past, but also its future. Yeah, and for just generally saving our arts, institutions in the north before they completely all get stripped away. I come from Bolton, which is sort of only over the hills, and I had the Octagon, and that's what inspired me as a little, working class kid from Singapore.
I heard this is very glitchy. Is that true for everyone? Is that just on my end that's a bit glitchy? So we can try and get someone else to play.
I can try and show it on mine. Sorry about this, guys. I do think it will be helpful.
Do you want to give that a go, Gareth?
For everyone to see this. I will share my screen. Sure.
I could still hear it though.
That's good that the sound's working. That's one less thing to worry about.
Bear with me. I will try and bring this up. Share sound. Bear with me a second. Right. Let's see if that's working. Where are we at? Right, so let me try that again. There we are. Right, can you guys tell me? I don't know what's going on with my sound now. Apologies for this. We might have to just... Oh, here we are. Is sound on?
We're trying to save Oldham Coliseum because it's been here for 135 years, serving its local community. And we believe really strongly that the people of Oldham deserve a theatre on their doorstep, just like the people of Manchester and the people of London. And of course, for us as a union, it's really important that our members can have work locally and produce work for that local community.
I've loved being an audience member here. I love all the shows they put on, but also they do lots of really important community outreach work. They really walk the walk in terms of supporting local artists and actually supporting local communities.
It's an important part of this town's heritage, of its past, but also its future. Yeah, and for just generally saving our arts, institutions in the north before they completely all get stripped away. I come from Bolton, which is sort of only over the hills, and I had the Octagon, and that's what inspired me as a little, working class kid from single parent family. But it's not just about, everyone becoming actors or performers, it's about the audience and what empowerment, storytelling, and how important it is to us as human beings.
It's a producing house based in the northwest of England. It has a place in history with the local community, and it's loved. Added to which, as a member of Equity and as in fact as president of Equity, I would argue that it offers our members work. And if that theatre closes, then there will not be jobs for our members in this area to actually live here and look to this institution as a place to earn a living. We want the Arts Council to do the right thing.
We're calling the Arts Council to do the right thing.
The Arts Council to do the right thing.
We want the Arts Council to do the right thing and save Oldham Coliseum.
Hello, hi, I'm Linda Rook, I'm President of Equity, and this is for Darren Henley and Sarah Maxfield from the people of Oldham and for Equity members across the UK.
Thank you.
Thank you. Would you pass it on, please?
I do.
Thank you. I was at the meeting last night, it was very strongly attended, 400 plus, and big emotions going on there, and anger and frustration.
Okay, thank you for handing this in. We'll pass it on.
Thank you very much,
Thank you.
Thank you.
Great, thanks very much, everyone. Hope everyone was able to watch that. There's a bunch of different things going on in that video that I want to talk you through. So why did we run this campaign? Oldham Coliseum represented 25% of all paid actor weeks available to our freelance members in the Northwest. That's a huge proportion from a really small theatre. So it's a really important source of work for our members. So the decision was we needed to save it. And what you see in that video is the real life outcomes of the digital mobilising we did through Megaphone. We called a public meeting to focus community pressure on the decision maker, which we decided was the funding body, Arts Council England. We used Megaphone's Greater Manchester list of supporters to promote the public meeting, and as you saw, we packed that theatre with 400 people. We used that mass of people to focus pressure on Arts Council England, who you can see from the video, we invited to the public meeting knowing they would refuse to attend. And so we were able to empty chair them on stage. We had all our other community speakers there, and we had a big sign where the Arts Council England speaker would have sat on stage, making it very clear to everyone and all the press who attended as well that Arts Council had refused to attend the meeting. We then turned what had been an online petition into a physical one by asking attendees to sign that big petition prop you saw in the video on their way into the meeting as they first arrived arrived at the theatre itself. We then made a commitment in the meeting to hand that petition in to Arts Council offices the next morning in Manchester. This offered us media opportunities to regional ITV and BBC, who reported live from our event on the 6 o'clock news. And if you can return to the slides now, Lois or Matthew, you can get an image of that as well, of what that looked like. So after our petition hand-in, we were offered a meeting with Arts Council England to discuss our concerns. And we actually used what was talked about earlier, the targeted emails. So you can see in this photo here, that's ITV Regional News set up, broadcasting live on their 6 o'clock news, evening news, just before the meeting started, talking about what's happening, interviewing Maxine Peake. And you can see in the second photo, he's kind of looking over to regional BBC News, who are just setting up the other side of the theatre, which I thought was quite funny. So we used the targeted emails that was talked about earlier to email board members of Arts Council England North, who are just, as in any board, upstanding members of the public, from various walks of life, who sit on the Arts Council's board. We flooded their inboxes with hundreds and hundreds of emails from supporters asking them to bring this to their board and force their director to change their decision on whether to fund Oldham Coliseum, which led us to receiving an invite for a meeting with the Arts Council North director. And she directly referenced the hundreds of emails that we had sent to her board members as the reason that she had offered the meeting. And this offered us another media opportunity. So in this series of collages here, photos, you can see our General Secretary, Paul Fleming, at a press conference outside the Arts Council offices in Manchester. We did this because we knew they weren't going to offer us anything in the meeting. So we decided to generate more campaign pressure by manufacturing a press conference, and we captured it on camera and fed it back to all our megaphone supporters who'd been signing the petitions, attending the meetings, etc., to maintain their rage and their interest and their support for the campaign. Weeks later, the Arts Council committed to ring-fencing funding for the theatre that they were going to cut. And 2 years later, it's been announced that the theatre is reopening as Oldham Coliseum, which is a really huge victory for us, and actually was spearheaded by, as you can see in the photo, you can see Julie Hesmanhouse there at Corrie Star and Proud Equity Deputy, which is our name for workplace rep. She's handing in one of our petitions there to the Arts Council in the early days of the campaign, and that really helps as well. Obviously, that kind of high-profile name, but it's a huge victory for our members who work there to have reversed that decision that the Arts Council will normally not do. And that is because of the unique amount of pressure that we're able to focus on the Arts Council and the unique local and beloved nature of the theatre. So recognising when that exists in a campaign, the potential for a campaign, I think, is important. And then using all of these megaphone tools to build that ongoing support was really helpful in terms of the success of our campaign. And what I want to emphasise here is the importance of megaphone petitions as a digital tool that allows you to create real life campaign moments to escalate pressure and win your demands. So I think I would summarise it by saying there's 3 reasons to use a petition that we do here at Equity, and I'll illustrate these with some campaign examples. So reason 1, it focuses on your target. Here you can see a photo of a bunch of our members who are cast members on River City. River City is Scotland's national soap. It's like Corrie or Emmerdale or whatever. Many of you won't come across it because it's not broadcast south of the border, but it's a really, really important cultural TV moment up in Scotland. BBC Scotland announced they were cutting it this year, and we launched a campaign to try and save it. Your target isn't always going to be obvious, and for us, this was a tricky decision to make for this campaign. In this campaign, we were trying to work out who are we targeting. Is it BBC Studios who make the show? Is it BBC Scotland? Is it the national BBC in London? Or is it the Scottish Government? Who is the target in this situation? Setting up the petition helped us think through who do we need to influence? Who was holding the purse strings, and therefore who do we need to target and influence? And in the process of writing the petition, that helped us define what the campaign was looking at. Example 2, if you can move to the next slide. The petition gives you options for escalations and pressure. In the previous Oldham Coliseum photos showed Julie Hesman House there with a petition hand in. We held 4 different public events as part of our Oldham campaign, including an emergency rally, the public meeting in the theatre, the petition hand in, and the press conference as well that you saw. Here, these photos from Bristol was our Restore Arts funding campaign. Most of the bread and butter work our members do comes from local government funding. Bristol had decided to cut that funding, and we launched a petition, called a rally, and you can see here these still images from BBC Evening News. Did a march on City Hall with all our supporters to hand in this petition to the mayor of the city. It's really helpful to have that clear target, like an elected mayor of Bristol, who was responsible for the decision that we were able to target. If the next slide, please. I'll just see what's on here. Oh, skip that one. It's a video that I won't put you through the pain of a video again, but that was just our petition hand in at Bristol. So here. Again, another funding cut issue, Suffolk County Council. Just to illustrate that you don't have to have a huge petition to win your demand. You know, we've had some pretty huge petitions like the Save River City one, over 12,000 signatures. But this one is just shy of 4,000 signatures. But we won our demand here. We got them to reverse their 100% cut to arts and culture funding with a relatively small amount of signatures, but it was recognizing that this petition could focus pressure on politicians who are not used to that kind of pressure in local government. And that was a really helpful tool for us to do that, which otherwise we had really disparate. In Suffolk, we don't have a high density of members, but the petition helped us focus that pressure where we had sort of a low density. And then next slide, please. Sorry, yes, this is a big petition resisting the cuts to arts funding in Northern Ireland. If you'll skip to the next slide, just an example of if you keep a petition running for a long time, it enables you to do lots of different awareness raising and campaign building events. You know, we moved from it was a 2-year-long campaign, which began as that petition that you saw, but gathered steam as we got our demands passed as policy in lots of local councils. We used the petition to intervene in the Northern Ireland Assembly, get a meeting with the minister, and get in front of the press when funding cuts were threatened again. And you can see in one of the photos there our big petition hand in as well to the minister. And then finally on this example about escalation and pressure and different tactics. Here, again, a relatively small petition from this summer, a festival that wasn't paying our members to work. They were, doing it for bed and board. But actually, we didn't even get to a petition hand in with this campaign. The 3,500 signatures we got for this petition was enough to force the director of the festival to negotiate with us because of the reputational damage this small petition caused locally. It put the director of the festival under pressure from the venues that he used, which are the Cambridge colleges. That's where he ran the performances. And that reputational damage forced him to negotiate with us, even though it was a relatively small petition. But it created a press and media interest. And that links on to my final point about what the key reasons to use a petition, creating these campaign and media opportunities. So as referenced earlier, Save Bethnal Green Working Men's Club started 2 years ago with the sort of shock decision by the club to sell, basically to convert to flats, instead of this vibrant cultural venue that lots of members get work at. We ran an emergency rallying petition to save Bethnal Green Working Men's Club, and it drew a public attention to an issue that was not being widely reported on. And that was why the petition was really beneficial in this case. It became a really big petition, and as a result of the rally that we ran with some great vibrant photos, and that's something to remember, always get good photos when you run rallies off the back of your petitions, because it creates some great media content for you to use with press and socials, etc. But the issue began to be reported on regularly by London media because of the petition and the rally, those campaign interventions we made. It was not being focused on before. The press hadn't found the story itself. It wasn't widely reported on. We made it an issue because of the petition and this campaign, and the effect of that and the increase in press focus on it was that the owners backed off the quick sale they were trying to push through for fear of the public backlash. And 2 years on, we're now in a position where we're negotiating with Tower Hamlets Council for them to buy the venue and for it to be run as a community interest company by the Friends of Bethnal Green Working Men's Club, which is like a local community group set up off the back of the campaign we ran. So some examples there to show you like some of the benefits and the reasons why setting up a petition and using Megaphone is really helpful to your campaign. Yeah, so those are some of the reasons you'd want to use a petition. If you followed my train of thought through this presentation about how digital campaign tools offer you ways to generate real life campaign moments, I'll finish with this. Do not let your petition die online. If you start one, hand it in. And that is my presentation. Thanks very much, everyone. Hope that was useful.
That was perfect. Thank you, Gareth. Yeah, loads of really amazing examples. And if it's not already obvious, we think that equity is like the gold standard of doing digital campaigning and taking it that extra step and yeah, not letting it die online. So yeah, that would be our big takeaway, is exactly the same as how can you use this as a way to engage your members or the public to get involved in your campaign in a physical way, because we know that in-person actions are what really matters. But how can we use digital to make them as good as possible, to give us a reason to meet in person? So we're doing okay for time. We've got about what I'm hoping to do now, and I'm hoping that people will be able to contribute to this, whether it's in the chat is completely fine, or also to raise your hand and we'll call you in. I've got just a mass of petition titles, and I want to hear from you what you think about them. Some of these, you know, they're not union specific, but some of these I think are brilliant, some maybe not so good. I'm keen to hear from you, maybe what you think is a good one or what you think is good about it. I'll be monitoring the chat if I can, but please do take a moment to have a look and see what it is you do or don't like about any of these. If anybody does want to raise their hand, that would make my morning, so please do. I can't see any hands raised at the minute. Anybody want to post in the chat, or maybe anyone from our lovely panel of speakers, or Daniel, put you on the spot, Daniel, if you want to come in, if there's any of these that you like or don't like, that would be lovely. Yeah, I've got a hand up. Is it Amanda?
Yeah.
Can you go ahead, Amanda?
I was looking at the one about outsourced ISS workers, and last year, probably a year and a half ago, the trust where I worked, we managed to pay the London living wage, or persuade ISS to pay the London living wage, but the trust itself did have to support that a bit. And now with the massive amounts of money that a lot of trusts are being asked to pay or make cuts, it's one of those things that's, I think, going to be really difficult, especially that one.
Yeah, you're spot on. Yeah, a really good point. Anybody got any thoughts about what kind of a good petition title might look like? Or yeah, did someone have their hand up and then maybe it got dropped? Was it Kevin? Am I right, Kevin? Did you want to come in? Go for it.
I did, but it's not on the question that you just asked there.
Oh, that's okay. You can still go ahead. That's okay.
Yeah, yes, it's a more sort of a different kind of question. So, what would you say? What would your advice be in terms of like a workplace issue that maybe, you know, it doesn't have, you know, an immediate public sort of recognition and cachet? Would you still sort of make that more sort of directed for the public to also contribute? Would an employer be more likely to be moved by, I don't know, 80% of your 1,000 members signing it? Or would they be more likely to be persuaded by double that, and it's including the public, even though that's not a particularly large percentage of the public? So I'm just wondering, you know, should petitions always have this, the public in mind as well? Or is there ever a time that you'd be looking at a petition that's focused mainly on the workforce that are affected?
Yeah. That is such a brilliant question. You're right. It not every campaign needs to have that public awareness angle. Sometimes it's about getting your members or your colleagues on board, and at that point, doing a petition like I guess the first kind of examples of petitions was things like that. It's a group of workers who are themselves directly affected signing, and you can say, yeah, 50%, 60, 70, 80% of the people at work feel this way. And then maybe with outsourced workers, it's saying, okay, the outsourced workers feel this way, and so do the in-house workers, and you might want to bring them in. But it doesn't necessarily need to have the public on board. Sometimes the best thing to do to show the employer the strength of feeling is to say, this is how the workers feel about this thing. The way in which I guess the public comes into play is if you want to do escalating. You feel like you've got as far as you can. Maybe you've got to the point of taking strike action or balloting, and like, how do we at that point, we want to get media attention, we want to put as much public pressure and sort of reputational damage pressure on the employer, and then at that point it becomes a really big deal to get public support. So it really just depends on what your ask is, how far along you are in your dispute, and you're right, whether your goal is to kind of have an action that workers can take and that workers can share with other colleagues and get as many people signing locally as possible, or whether your aim is to kind of put that public pressure on. A really good question. Just having a look at some things that people have put in the chat. Dennis, you've said, presumably headlines need to be instantly recognizable, especially for sharing. I think that's a really, really excellent point. Daniel, do you want to come in quickly, or should I can answer that too? But Daniel, do you want to come in first?
I was just going to follow up on the last kind of question or comment with an example from when I was a Unison rep in higher education and campaigning with their outsourced cleaners there. And it was Christmas, and the cleaners didn't used to get the closure days that all the in-house staff got, and just we both had a public facing petition and then a kind of a physical letter that I think 90% of the cleaning staff signed to the university president asking for those days, and we just used both of them in tandem. So we had the kind of impact of all the staff making that request, but then we used the petition that we already had going to tell our supporters about it, and then when the university gave in and gave the cleaners those days at Christmas, we could then feed back to our petition supporters saying, look, the campaign's making progress. Now let's have your support in the next steps of getting sick pay, getting annual leave equality, and bringing them in-house.
Brilliant, that's a great example. And worth saying as well, I guess on Megaphone, Matthew will have shown you an example where you can add a tick box to your petition where you can identify who works in the organisation and who is just a public supporter. And so that might be a useful way to kind of kill two birds with one stone if you're wanting to both have public support, but you're also really keen to go, we want to know how many people in the workplace have signed this petition. My thoughts, I'm going to come in quickly about some of these that I think are brilliant. This top left one, Brewdog, I'm assuming the majority of you on this call know what Brewdog is. It's a bar, and that name recognition means you're way more likely to engage with the petition because you know what they're talking about. So if you know that there's a kind of a big name involved in your campaign, use it, absolutely. Other things that can be brilliant, or maybe not so brilliant. Can you see the bottom one on the left, save our centres? It kind of doesn't give you too much context, does it? What centre are we saving? Sometimes that could be good because you want the intrigue, but maybe with as little detail as that, it's hard to know what it is you're going to be supporting. I'm going to run through just very quickly a couple of kind of things that we would suggest make a really great petition. It's not enough just to write one, it's also about making sure it's as strategic as possible. The first thing to say is about setting your goal. Like I said, you're not making a petition just to make one. It has to be that you have a clear goal and it's achievable. What is it that we're asking? Are we asking for a certain amount of pay rise? Are we asking for our union to be recognised? What is the clear goal, and is it achievable? The second one is about choosing your decision maker. And I'm going to just flip back to these slides. You can see on a couple of these petitions, maybe this bottom right one, they have addressed the petition to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 different people. We'd always suggest, if possible, to target your petition to just one person, because if there's multiple people can pass the buck onto each other. And I'm sure you'll all feel this in your outsourcing campaigns. The employer, the direct employer, and the outsourced employer are always going to be saying it's the other one who has to deal with the situation. So if you direct your petition quite clearly to one individual, it makes it very clear who it is that you are putting the pressure on, and they'll feel that pressure much more. Snappy title as well. You want something that's eye-catching. You want to be using save, stop, resist, support, all these strong words. We also talk about telling a story. So we can have a tendency when we write any sort of text really about a campaign that we go really into the detail, because the detail as a rep is important, and as an organizer it is important to have that detail. But if we want something to be presented to a huge audience who maybe don't know anything about your campaign, how can we write it in a way that's moving? Do we have an individual worker's story to tell that can center on the petition? How can we use the least amount of jargon and sort of inside knowledge as possible, so that everyone can get on board with our campaign? And then the final point is just a picture says 1,000 words. If you're able to get a photo of your members in question on your petition, that makes a huge difference, so that people kind of connect your campaign to a group of individuals who are real, not just some words on a page. I'm just going to very quickly talk about another thing we're able to support with, and that's something you could use in your campaigning, which is our Strike Funder project. The idea is that we have members of the public who want to get involved in campaigns. Things they might do are signing petitions, or sending these targeted emails, or writing their MP. But there's also a really tangible way that people can support, which is donating money. So here's an example from Airedale Hospital up north, where it is outsourced workers who are taking strike action for pay equality. The idea here is to build a strike fund, a hardship fund, so that the workers can keep going, right? Your unions will already have strike funds, but what a great way to tell people about your dispute by asking them to chip in to support the workers who are losing out on pay while they're on strike. We've got another example here up in Liverpool against outsourced workers, and here the idea was a bit different. They had been out on strike for a long time, and tensions can be high on picket lines, especially on a long-running dispute. It can be hard. So what we wanted to do was raise enough money to take a coffee van to the picket line, so that they could have a sort of, a big celebration, keep them warm while they're out all day. And again, it's a nice way for members of the public to chip in. It also kind of creates a spectacle. So like Gareth was saying, like, how do we turn digital actions into a big event? Like, what we could have done is just raise the money and send it to them and said, buy yourself some coffees. But instead it's like, let's turn it into this big sort of idea of a mega picket. Let's get speakers from local trades councils and other unions and workers to come up and speak, and turn it into a real event that kind of is solidarity in action. I'm keen to hear again in the chat, feel free to post what kind of digital tools you are using in your campaigning. We've spoken a lot about Megaphone, about petitions in general, but I've just popped a few examples on the slide there to have a think about other things that you're using. I think when we talk about digital campaigning, we think it's something fancy, but actually all of you, I suspect, will be using at least one of these tools on the page in your organising and campaigning of outsourced workers. So do feel free to pop in the chat if you are using any of these, or also feel free to put in the chat if you don't know what any of these are, and I could give a very quick overview. So I'll give you 30 seconds to just have a think and put something in the chat. That would be brilliant. And then if we've got time, I think we do, maybe 5 minutes. I'm going to run through quickly a few more examples about how unions are using WhatsApp in their organising. Oh, brilliant. So Tracy said in the chat that she's using WhatsApp to organise. That's brilliant. Patricia's using ThroughText, WhatsApp, Zoom and Canva. That's amazing. Yeah, I can tell you, Kevin, what Action Network is. Action Network is sort of a platform to hold membership data. So we use it to hold all the people who sign the petition, all their information lives in there, and then we can send them emails. So some unions have their own Action Networks account. I'm not sure of any branches that have their own, but it's essentially a place to hold all your data so that you can reach out to your members. Kind of similar, I guess, to MailChimp. Someone has said they're using ThroughText, which is brilliant. If you haven't heard of ThroughText before, it's a way to text your members, but crucially, it's kind of like two-way texting. So you might have heard of like these platforms where you can send these mass messages out to all of your members, but ThroughText is a way that the people can reply and they can have sort of replicate those one-to-one conversations, but through text. That's the idea. Nice. I'm going to talk for the last couple of minutes about WhatsApp for campaigning. Got a couple of examples and then a few sort of considerations to run through. Hopefully everyone on the call, the fact that you've come along to this call doesn't need convincing that digital matters, but it's worth knowing that so many people are using WhatsApp, so we would be remiss to not be using it as a tool to reach workers. This is just a quick example to show when people sign petitions, we can see on the back end where they're coming from, like what is making them sign. Have they come from social media? Have they come from an email? Have they come from a QR code? And this is just to show you that by far and away, more and more people are using WhatsApp to share petitions, to share links, to share videos than they are using Facebook and Twitter. So it's worth getting onto it. I'm going to send a link to everybody after this, which, or I'll get Daniel to do it, which is to this this website called WhatsApp Link Generator. And the idea is you literally type in your text and a link, and it generates a sort of a link that you can send to people, such that when they click on it, it comes up with a sort of template message that they can send to people, and that can be a really good way to get people sharing things on WhatsApp. But I will send that around to people afterwards. Here's a really lovely example of how unions are using WhatsApp to try and engage members. So this is quite an old example from back in the pandemic. You had Wetherspoon workers, I'm sure we'll all remember when Tim Martin, the chair of Wetherspoons, sacked all his Wetherspoons workers on Zoom. It was this huge moment, huge amounts of anger of hospitality workers not knowing what they were going to do next. They just lost their job online. So to capitalize on that moment, they started the Bakers Food and Allies Workers Union. They started a petition on Megaphone. The idea was like, let's get as many people who are Wetherspoons workers to sign the petition, and then we'll invite them to join a WhatsApp group. And they ended up with a WhatsApp group of, I think, about 500 Wetherspoons workers from across the country. Obviously, many of you will be thinking 500 workers in one group, that is so unwieldy, it's bound to descend into chaos. And so what they did is they put it so that only admins could send messages, and then for an hour a day, they would turn on the messages and they would call it happy hour. This idea, for 1 hour a day, we're going to get workers speaking to each other about the issues that they faced at Wetherspoons. And they would kind of like put inciting questions in, like, what's the worst thing that ever happened to you on shift, and get people to discuss that question, which was a really, really brilliant and focused way to get people talking. Another example that could have some relevance to outsource workers, over at Amazon, where they're organising and taking strike action for union recognition. They also have a 500 member strong WhatsApp group. They're also very aware that there are dozens of different languages that are spoken by workers at Amazon, and so they needed a way to make sure that everyone was being engaged with in a way that they felt comfortable with or could understand their primary language. And so what they did is they would do regular videos of sound recording. So they would translate messages into different languages, and then they would kind of post all these links on a link tree. If you haven't heard of link tree, it's basically a place to store lots and lots of links for free, and that way people could go and listen to the message, the important message, in their own language. And I think what's really beautiful and crucial about this is that the people who were voicing these translations were workers and worker leaders and reps at Amazon who spoke these languages. So it was a way to engage those workers and hear from people that they knew as much as anything else. Just quickly, I'm sure many of you would be thinking, if you don't use WhatsApp and you're organising, it's worth considering the sort of the risk, the data protection risk. And so there's a few things we would always recommend if you're using WhatsApp and you're organising. The first thing is about inviting people to join. Don't assume that everybody wants to join your group. Don't do a mass invite. You can send people links to join your group, or you can ask them verbally or ask them online to join, but don't assume that they want to join. It's always good to have people in the chat whose role is to moderate it. So if it gets out of hand, you've got your handful of people who are there to step in. And you've also got your data protection officer and your unions who can give you some advice about how your union is set up to use WhatsApp. A few other quick things to say is just about being conscious of who's in your group. So WhatsApp groups, we can't assume that management or kind of bad faith people are in those groups. So always talk as if you would, talk if you were speaking out of a megaphone or to a huge group of people. You can't be sure who's in that group. It doesn't mean it can't be a useful tool for discussing, for making plans, but it's just about making sure you don't say anything that could get you in trouble at work. Disappearing messages could be an interesting thing to use. You can set kind of the time at which messages won't be able to be viewed. So maybe after 30 days, you can't view all the previous messages. And worth thinking why you're setting up a group in the first place. What is the goal of setting up the group? Does it have a time frame? Is the idea that once the action is over, or once the event is over, or once whatever it is over, that you're going to close that group down so it doesn't kind of just linger on in the background? Do you want to be communicating directly to people? Or do you want there to be group conversation? If you just want to be sending out your message, maybe you want to set it so that no one else can send messages. Or do you want to be encouraging conversation? Who is responsible for maintaining that group? Is it the union, or is it reps? Who can join the group? I think there's this really interesting idea about whether your WhatsApp groups are sort of become a privilege for members only, the idea that if you join the union, you get to be part of the WhatsApp group, or whether it is open to potential members. That can be a discussion for you in your own unions. And whether you start your group kind of slowly but surely, gaining new members as you go, or whether you wait until you have a big group of members or a big issue to discuss, and at that point you launch your group. So that is a few ramblings from me about WhatsApp. We're doing over on time, so I'll probably call it there for the day, but I hope that that's been helpful. We've talked about petitions, we've talked about strike funds, we've talked about WhatsApp, petition hand-in events, lots of things there. The crucial thing to say is that Matthew and I are available if people do want to have a further chat about how to use petitions. This is just sort of an overview to show you what other unions are up to and what's available out there. So do get in touch with us, and we'll make sure that we send around a mass of links and slides so that you can think about this in your own time. But I'll throw it over to Daniel to wrap us up for the day.
Cheers, Lois, and a big thanks to you, Gareth and Matthew. It's been really interesting and I hope really useful for everyone on the call. Just before I start to wrap up, Patrick, I've seen a couple of the comments that you've put in the chat about the UCL Unison Insourcing campaign. I'll get in touch with you about links to other branches. And just for everybody, get in touch with me or your TUC regional office if you want links to other insourcing campaigns, because we're trying to build up a picture, or we are building up a picture of what's going on across the country. And likewise, if you do want support for campaigns, get in touch with your regional office, TUC office, and we can see how we can support you. So 3 final things. One, I want to encourage you all again to join our WhatsApp broadcast only announcement group for trade unionists organising with outsourced workers. The link's going in the chat. It's very large for some reason, but it's there. Secondly, our next webinar is in 5 weeks' time on Wednesday, the 12th of November. We're going to be looking at multilingual organising with outsourced workers, so how officers and activists organise with workers who speak English as a second language. And I'm going to pop a link to that in the chat as well. Do register and share it, and we'll put a link around via email as well. Final thing is we are going to be reaching out to you to ask kind of what you think the TUC can do to support you in your campaigns with outsourced workers. So look out for a survey and please let us know that way. That's it for today. Thanks very much, everyone, for joining.